Starting right now, The Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, mystery surrounds Daniel Andrews' business ventures and billionaire clients. My panel will join me to discuss the day's top headlines. The government considers building a new oil refinery in what Matt Canavan calls an admission of failure. Professor Ian Plimer will weigh in on that topic. News Nation host Katie Pavlich will join the program for the first time, and I'll get her reaction to the disturbing Fauci revelations and the White House response to Katy Perry's angry rant about the use of her music. Michael Loftus will have all your entertainment news later in the hour. And we never forget lefties losing it tonight, featuring certifiable Rosie O'Donnell claiming the Trump administration is building concentration camps across the country.
All over this country, the concentration camps that are being built, the perpetual lies that he tells, the bullying, the blackmail.
But first, the decade-long rule of Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen has left Victoria with the nation's highest unemployment, highest taxes, highest debt, most corruption and the worst crime rate in Australia. Before Labor took over, net debt was $21 billion in Victoria, or 5.9% of gross state product. In 2030, net debt is forecast to be $236 billion, or 30% of gross state product. Barrister Jeffrey Watson SC wrote in a report this year that $15 billion had been lost to CFMEU, corruption and big bill projects. But it wasn't just debt and taxes which rose. Crime has soared under Labor's watch, from home invasions to fire bombings of shops and clubs. Let's bring in the panel. Joining me now is former Liberal MP Nicole Flint and Sky News contributor Prue McSween. Nicole, I'll start with you. It is a litany of failure, a shameful record, and yet Jacinta Allen, like her predecessor, went out defending her record, celebrating her record, while Victorians pick up the bill.
Rita, look, I literally have no words. There is not one positive that you can take out of this decade of Labor terror, really, that they've inflicted on hardworking Victorians. I don't really understand how anyone is still left in the state, given the catastrophic figures that you've just gone through, given the waste, given the corruption with the unions. What was it, $15 billion, I think you just said, that has been lost to the CFMEU on all of these big build projects. Some of those projects are roads to nowhere. They abandoned the Commonwealth Games, which we're currently seeing run very successfully in the UK. I just hope that Victorians send a very clear message to Labor, even though they have desperately tried to install a new premier, that they don't want them anymore, and that it should be not just one decade, but 2 or 3 decades before they are ever given another chance to run the state of Victoria.
Prue, Nicole mentioned the Commonwealth Games. Right now, they're underway in Glasgow. These are games Victorians paid for. That's our tax dollars being enjoyed, being squandered on the other side of the world, Prue.
Well, it's a daily reminder, isn't it, of how inept, how disgraceful that government was. And it was interesting, they were saying in the papers today it was like a maths episode. Well, I think that this isn't a reality show government. It is a crime series. And, it's a crime against the Victorian people and the rest of Australia who are going to have to bail this state out. The tantrums, the terrible manipulation, the standover tactics, even the feather bed hopping. This is a state that has had it all, a party that is so disgraceful. And Allen, to try and rewrite history, her history, was so insulting to every Victorian, every Australian.
Absolutely. As we discussed last night, there was absolutely no admission of any sort of shortcoming. She did not apologise for anything. You would think at the very least she'd mention the Commonwealth Games and say, because she was the minister responsible, even under Dan Andrews, for that particular project. Now, There's been revelations of what took place after Jacinta Allen's resignation yesterday morning. Labor MPs have described the drama inside the caucus room before Ben Carroll was named the Premier. Jacinta Allen's supporters caught MPs off guard by nominating Attorney General Sonia Kilkenny to contest the leadership, which would have been disastrous for Labor. The move was described by multiple sources as straight out of Dan Andrews' playbook. During the deliberations, there was shouting, cheers, even some fake tears. Nicole, one MP, said there was more tension in the room than the season finale of Married at First Sight. Tell my audience why Kilkenny nominated. She never really intended to contest the leadership, but obviously these are factional games inside Labor.
And honestly, Rita, Labor care more about themselves than they do about the Victorian people. And it is extraordinary to see this sort of ill discipline within Labor. They are usually very organised, very ruthless about these sorts of changeovers and handovers. So I think that it just reflects that they have not just made a huge mess of the Victorian economy and all of the fundamentals like law and order and keeping people safe, but they are internally in complete chaos, which is another reason that I hope every single Victorian votes them out at the upcoming election to get your beautiful state back on track.
Well, I don't know about Libs being in the box seat, Prue. I think Ben Carroll is going to be far harder opposition for them. He doesn't have the hatred that Dan Andrews and Jacinta Allen in particular inspire in this stage. Jacinta Allen's polling numbers were absolutely diabolical, the most unpopular political leader in the country by some margin. Do you think Ben Carroll is going to boost their primary vote and really give them a little bit of comfort leading into the November election?
Absolutely not. I think this is the bloke who stood there beside her, who pledged allegiance to her, who is part of the decision making. He's just as tainted, Rita. You know, he's even, you know, just announcing last night that he's going to have a royal commission. We know why, because he wants to control the terms of reference. He is just as murky. I do not believe that Victorians will buy any of it. The bloke is just as inept, I believe, as the rest of the party. And I just hope that Victorians don't fall for it. And if One Nation and the Liberals campaign properly, they'll just remind the voters of how his influence was. He was just as culpable as anyone else.
Now, there's a bit of mystery around Daniel Andrews' business ventures following his retirement from politics. One of his businesses, 48 and Partners, doesn't even have a website, phone number or an advertised email address. But last week, Dan Andrews was listed as an attendee for the fundraiser held at the billionaire Lee family's Point Piper mansion. And Nicole, this company may not have a website or phone number, but it has some big clients. Obviously, Dan Andrews has got some very rich connections over the years. And one of those clients includes Andrew Forrest's Fortescue.
Well, Rita, look, I don't know how we are still allowing former MPs to set up to do this sort of lobbying and without very much transparency. So it'd be fascinating for someone to actually dig into what's going on here, because I think there's probably quite the story to tell if people like Twiggy Forrest are using Dan Andrews' services, if we could call it that. I think there's a lot more to this story, and I hope that it all comes out.
Now, the Commonwealth has settled the lawsuit brought by former Liberal staffer Fiona Brown. Brown claimed that former Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his senior advisors prevented her from responding to false allegations by Brittany Higgins that destroyed her life. Morrison refused to talk to Brown after the scandal broke, except to tell her they had spoken, which when they had not. She said she felt frightened and intimidated by the encounter. Nicole, there's no doubt that Fiona Brown was thrown under the bus, despite doing everything by the book.
I feel tremendously sorry for her, Rita. Her career has suffered, her health has suffered. She attempted suicide. Things were that catastrophically bad for her. I'm relieved that Labor have finally done the right thing, but they should have done the right thing on day one. You know, they could settle the Brittany Higgins lawsuit with the Commonwealth within something like 24 hours, wasn't it? But they've dragged Fiona Brown through the courts for something like 6 months. What I haven't seen in any of the reporting, though, about this excellent decision by Labor to actually settle the matter so that she can finally get on with her life. And as we know, she's been exonerated from all of the appalling claims that were made against her. But what we haven't seen is the mention of Senator Penny Wong and Senator Katie Gallagher, who seem to have gotten off scot-free. You know, the fraudulent fake feminists that they are, because they were the ones who weaponised these claims against Linda Reynolds, against Fiona Brown, as much as anyone. So I live in hope that we will see them suffer. I doubt that we will, but they are responsible in large part for this abomination. And I'm just so relieved that Fiona can now, I hope, get on with her life.
Well, the Australian's Stephen Rice has written about this. He said the hypocrisy of the Albanese government in its treatment of Brown is staggering. He wrote, the Albanese government has put Brown through hell as she fought for her day in court, resisting her Fair Work claim tooth and nail, hiring an expensive legal team and piling on the pressure. He added, left in the wilderness, Brown found herself fighting a battle on two fronts, against the coalition's betrayal and Labor's bloody-mindedness. She stood her ground against both. Prue, she has been vindicated, but the Albanese government's conduct here is shameful. They did not need to do this.
Well, you know, this is the party that is supposed to champion women and support women. You know, they're just a bunch of hypocrites. This is so shameful that she may be vindicated, but her life has been ruined. Her health has been ruined. Her, you know, prospects of probably wanting to even have another job have been killed off. Scandalous behaviour from the opposition and the government. And I have to say, this is one of the most shameful periods of this government's life, and probably the Morrison government's life too. You know, awful, disgraceful. And look at this, Linda Reynolds is still fighting. You know, this is another woman who has been compromised and put in a corner. And I just hope that she keeps going. I know money's tight, but they cannot be allowed to get away with it. And I just hope that in all the electoral campaigns that will be happening in the lead up to the next election, that people are reminded of this behaviour, this brutal government, and what they have done to these two women.
Well said, Prue McSween. Nicole Flynn, thank you so much for your time. Now, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and West Australian Premier Roger Cook have announced a joint $4 million pre-feasibility study for a new large-scale oil refinery in Karratha. Australia has not built an oil refinery since the 1960s, and today just 2 remain in operation. 20 years ago, we had 8 refineries.
Well, I don't see how you can be saying you're pursuing net zero if you want to build oil refineries. I think net zero has been a massive handbrake on our economy. It stopped us from using our natural resources like our oil, like our coal, like our gas to lower energy prices and the cost of living for Australians. And effectively, yesterday's announcement is an admission of defeat, an admission of failure from this government.
Joining me now for more on this is esteemed geologist, author and executive director at Hancock Energy, Professor Ian Plimer. Ian, do you agree with Nationals leader Matt Canavan there that this move by the PM and Premier Cook, well, it amounts to an admission of failure?
Well, it certainly is an admission of failure. Net zero hasn't worked. It's cost people a hell of a lot more money for everything, be it for their carrots at the supermarket or be it for their rent or be it for fuel. It has cost us a lot. And when the fuel prices go up again, it will cost us even more. And what this is really doing is that the Prime Minister is saying, well, we're going to do a pre-feasibility study. We're going to spend $4 million of your money, your taxpayers' money, and that will mean that if you ask me a question about fuel or about refineries, you can say, oh, no, we're doing a feasibility study right now. Don't jump the gun. This is a method of avoiding difficult questions and difficult decisions before an election. We need refineries.
Oh.
His pre-feasibility study is unrelated to reality because of exactly what Senator Canavan said, and that is you can't hold two contrary positions, and that's what he wants to do. In effect, he's trying to avoid criticism. In effect, he's trying to walk on both sides of the street. It doesn't work. We know that net zero is a sham, and we know that we live off petroleum in this country to keep us going. We have to have more refineries. But what he hasn't told us is that we need to import oils for this refinery. We need to import heavy oils to mix with our lighter Australian oils to be able to get diesel, which we use a lot of in Western Australia. So he's not telling us the whole story. And he's basically playing a political game of just shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic.
And how can you be abandoning fossil fuels, going ahead with net zero and all the climate targets they've set, and doing things like this? Like you said, trying to please everybody, and it's not going to work. You need to have a rational, logical and consistent energy policy, which we don't have in this country.
Well,
now, leading environment...
How did the Prime Minister get to Karratha? Did he walk there, or did he go on a bicycle? Or did he fly using a taxpayer-funded aeroplane, burning up fossil fuels? And when he was driven around Karratha, I've been to Karratha many times, you can't walk around there. You've got to be driven. So he's using fossil fuels like they're going out of fashion, and he's walking both sides of the street. So I think the electorate is not that stupid. They can see that he's trying yet again to con us and yet again to avoid difficult questions.
Now, leading environmental advocate and former Treasury Secretary Ken Henry says Australia's entire climate change policy architecture is at risk of disappearing, and those on both sides are to blame. In a speech, he said, there are some in our political system who will exploit any crisis, financial, social or environmental, for personal advancement. Every crisis becomes an embarrassing spectacle of fear-mongering and finger-pointing. Narcissistic exhibitionism is rampant in political systems all around the world, but strongly so in this country and especially so in climate policy. And I couldn't believe this. The pure chutzpah here is astonishing. I mean, I love it when climate alarmists of all people talk about others' fear-mongering.
Well, he's given a very good description of himself. Exactly the business he's in. He really is eminently unemployable. We don't need a climate business in this country. And what he's really objecting to is people like you, like me, and like many others who are saying, well, wait a minute, folks, the evidence doesn't stack up. There is no country in the world that runs on sea breezes and sunbeams. There is no industrial economy that can survive using alternative energy. And he's even objecting to conservationists who are saying, hang on a tick, these monstrosities that you're putting on farmland are killing wildlife, they're wiping out forests, they're stopping food production. And I listened to that speech and I thought, which planet is this man on? And I thought, yes, I know, he's talking his own book. He wants to be able to be in a well-paid job, frightening people witless about some climate change which hasn't happened and will not happen. And so he can maintain his profile, maintain his well-paid position, and say, just let us get on with the job of spending all your money and sending this country broke, and don't you dare ask any questions.
Absolutely, and you cannot deviate from the official narrative even a little bit. Like, you can't ask questions like, why, if wholesale power prices have come down, we're told they've hit a 4-year low, why are our bills so high? Australians are wondering, Ian, why their energy bills continue to stay sky high when we're told prices are falling.
Well, I've got a couple of very simple requests, being a simple person. Where's my $275? I've been waiting for years for this money. I haven't had it. That would pay a bill, but we haven't had it. And the second thing is, we seem to forget history. We once had very cheap, reliable electricity, especially in Victoria with brown coal. It was one of the cheapest in the world. And because we've been fed this myth that emissions of plant food are going to destroy the planet, we've killed off all of our cheap, reliable electricity. People's bills have gone through the roof, and no one has yet shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. So the whole lot is a con job, and we have been conned by the Prime Minister. I want my $275, and you better give it to me before the next election.
Professor Plimer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Still to come, lefties losing it, and reaction to the disturbing Anthony Fauci revelations from the US. Katie Pavlich is next. You're watching the Rita Panahi Show, and it's time for Lefties Losing It. And we have good news. Climate doomsdayer Greta Thunberg has expanded her horizons again. She's not only become vehemently anti-Israel in recent years, protesting for Palestine and Lebanon, now she has a new cause, India's Cockroach Janta Party. Yes, our favourite little doom goblin is suddenly very passionate about this student-led movement.
The Indian students' struggle for justice and the broader struggle for democracy and liberation is also our struggle. So we all have to come together now and rise up in solidarity with India.
Now, what happens when two miserable, delusional, tedious, afflicted souls come together? Well, this happens. Here is the diabolically delusional Rosie O'Donnell with the equally irrational Anna Navarro.
Apparently, they're going to be sending ICE out on Election Day. Not holy what the has happened to our country. Right. No one is pressing the alarm button. Nobody is breaking the glass in case of emergency. It is past time, America. And if my speaking out encourages anyone to speak out, to not be afraid of him, fear is a tool of fascism. And that's what he's using.
Is she calling for an insurrection there and fascism, Rosie? You wouldn't know the meaning of the word. Now, watch here as she recklessly and falsely accuses the president of rape and pedophilia. Rosie, if he sues you, you are done.
You pedophile. Who do you think you are? That's what I would say to him.
You would. But I've always wondered why the whole press corps doesn't just walk out.
So he got the Republican nomination. I was positive that he would not win.
2016 or 2024?
2024.
Okay.
Positive. Not like I was positive. We were not going to elect the man who led an insurrection against the United States, who's a convicted sexual rapist.
You know what? Good on her for admitting there that she is hopelessly out of touch. She couldn't even imagine President Trump winning. She thought there was zero chance, let alone the fact that he won in a landslide, winning the popular vote, every swing state, and the Electoral College by a massive margin. What sort of echo chamber must you exist in, Rosie, if you thought he was no chance? I live in Australia and I knew he had every chance of winning. But then again, I'm not batshit crazy with hate and hysteria. If I was, I might claim that the Trump administration is building concentration camps across the country.
And watching what ICE has done all over this country, the concentration camps that are being built, the perpetual lies that he tells, the bullying, the blackmail of universities, of television networks and studios.
Oh, just crazy, fact-free, paranoid fantasies presented as fact. I feel sorry for that poor dog there. Did you see the dog having to listen to these two miserable mavens talk endlessly about Donald Trump? Now here, Rosie diagnoses the president with a litany of serious illnesses.
I really believe he has a severe mental illness, untreated, and he's in a narcissistic collapse, if you ask me, which happens to narcissists. And he's so physically addled by his illnesses now, by his frontal temporal lobe dementia.
There is so much projection with the modern left. Just remember, just about every accusation is a confession. And one last bit of Rosie, here she is. She was so moved with the White House Correspondents' Dinner that she wrote and performed this little song. I warn you, the next 20 seconds will be painful. This is called Weapon Grade Cringe.
He ain't no stable genius, got a teeny tiny but he doesn't have a brain. The reflecting pool is green. His reasons were obscene. It's him we all do blame. Da-na-da-na-na-na. He grew a magic ear, stole billions in a year, 'cause he doesn't have a brain.
You know, I'd pity her because she's pitiful, but then she's so unpleasant and awful. It makes it hard to pity her. Talking about unpleasant and awful, let's check in on this male nurse who films himself mocking paralysed patients and claims he deliberately lies to immigration and customs enforcement to protect illegal immigrants. Yeah. Let's hear from actress Anne Hathaway. This resurfaced clip has been going viral in recent days as folks around the world wonder what in God's name is wrong with her. Why is she railing against biological reality? Why is she race baiting? And why is she pretending that she is not one of the rich elite?
With the exception of being a cisgender male, everything about how I was born has put me at the current center of a damaging and widely accepted myth. That myth is that gayness orbits around straightness, transgender orbits around cisgender, and that all races orbit around whiteness. And it is a myth that keeps money and power in the hands of the few instead of being invested in the lives of the free.
Joining me now is News Nation host Katie Pavlich. Katie, so good to have you on the program. Last time we did a bit of a deep dive into the extraordinary, the disturbing revelations in Dr. Anthony Fauci's diary. This is a man who changed the course of history. It's not hyperbole to say that. And we now know how often he misled the world about COVID-19, how obsessed, utterly obsessed he was with his own fame. What have you made of these revelations?
Well, for me, nothing that we've seen in the diaries was surprising as someone who covered the COVID-19 pandemic and watched as these inconsistencies and illogical decisions were made by Anthony Fauci, which he tried to deny publicly. And as things continued to not add up, his decisions got increasingly more unhinged. It was very clear to me watching his press conferences and the way that he, said initially masking doesn't work, but then all of a sudden we were getting thrown off of planes or not allowed to travel on trains in America without these masks. And then it continued into keeping schools shut down. The list goes on and on. So, have a lot of people who were defending Dr. Fauci for years, like Dr. Scott Gottlieb, for example, trying to say, oh, well, this is not the Dr. Fauci that I knew. Well, this is the Dr. Fauci I knew, what we saw in the diary.
Yes.
Now, of course, the details about the specifics of what he was saying publicly and privately are important, like the deadliness of the virus. He was saying publicly was far more deadly than he was saying in his private diaries. I think the revelations about the media, the fact that he was telling Americans not to have Thanksgiving dinner with their families, but yet was having dinner with members of the media around the exact same time, shows the complicity in that. And also there was this massive censorship that occurred in the United States and of course all around the world to suppress the lab leak theory, which a lot of us knew was fact almost immediately, including Dr. Fauci, according to Trace.
Absolutely. And his attacks against some of the leading experts in the world. We're talking people from Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, people like Dr. Martin Kulldorff, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who he absolutely went after, and really the media went after to discredit them when they questioned some of the measures that were being taken. Now, after the revelations of this diary, tell me what sort of coverage have US media given what we've now know? Things that were written by this man himself. You could not put any spin on it.
Well, we actually just had Dr. Scott Atlas on our show, on our News Nation show, to talk about this exact thing. He was working on the COVID task force. Dr. Fauci was repeatedly trying to get him fired, despite the fact that he was an expert in this area and warning against the consequences, which are vast as a result of these policies that were put into place. But in terms of the coverage from the media, there are very few people covering it. Fox News is covering it. News Nation is covering it. There are conservative outlets like Town Hall, where I used to work, that have covered it from the beginning, that were punished by the tech oligarchs at Google and Facebook for daring to report facts and quotes from intelligence officials about the lab leak theory, for example. And now that you have this diary out, you're seeing very few media outlets covering it. We'll see if, based on the testimony that Fauci is giving in front of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, that Senator Rand Paul is leading and who has been leading the charge against Fauci's lies for years, whether we will see more coverage of that. But, you know, when you're complicit in what has happened, it's very difficult for the majority of people in the media to now admit what they did was horrifically wrong, not to mention, you know, acknowledge the consequences of these decisions that were made as a result of the panic over COVID. I mean, you could do a show every night about the consequences, whether it was suicide rates going up, alcoholism, drug rates going up, the number of people who didn't get their cancer treatments or their, quote, elective surgeries as a result of them denying people from going into the hospital. I know plenty of people who had to, you know, listen or hear from people inside nursing homes or hospitals that their grandparents or loved ones had passed away because they weren't allowed to be with them. They were forced to die alone. I mean, the list goes on. And so when you're complicit in that kind of behavior, of course you don't want to cover it.
Yep, the media was so complicit. There was so few outlets. Ours here in Australia was one of the few who questioned these COVID measures. As you probably know, in Australia, we went particularly crazy. Where I live in Melbourne, we had 6 lockdowns, the most anywhere in the world. So the craziness peaked. But let's have a reminder of what Fauci inflicted on even the youngest Americans.
Put your mask on. No, you gotta wear it on, honey.
No, you gotta keep it on.
Put your mask on.
There you go. Keep it right there.
Yay, Mason! Yay!
Keep it on, Mason. Look, we're gonna keep it right here. Nope.
Just heartbreaking, Katie. And he bragged about the influence he had. On TV, he would say it had nothing to do with school closures. But then in his diaries, he bragged about getting California, getting New York to close their school. You see the mask mandates there even impacting the youngest people who should have never been masked. Really, no one should have been masked outdoors at all. Masking indoors, you can have an argument about. And all of this, in large part, to boost his ego. He was so obsessed with the media coverage he got, with the adulation he got.
Yeah, the very strange thing in his diary, one of the strange things, there are many, is that, you know, the death count that he was taking toll of, while also talking about all the attention that he was receiving and the dinners he was being invited to while he demanded everybody else stay home, and the celebrities who he was having phone calls with, like Julia Roberts. When you play that video of that child being forced into that situation, it's not just heartbreaking, it's infuriating. And I remember, you know, being on an airplane and watching the flight attendants badgering this mother and her husband because their 2-year-old didn't want to wear a mask. They threatened them with permanent banning from being able to fly ever again. That was a result of these mandates that Dr. Fauci wanted in place. And he admitted early on, even publicly, that masking did not prevent this virus from spreading. And yet, when he changed his mind, he continued to push it on the youngest of us and all of us for control, whether you were traveling or whether you were trying to get kids back into schools. And the education portion of this is so important. The masking of children in schools caused generational harm in terms of speech impediments for young kids who are trying to learn, kids who were in school trying to just learn different languages, like Spanish, for example. You can't learn or teach Spanish in a mask. And then, of course, there was just the discomfort of it and the lack of interaction with young people, being able to have real conversations with a real face and a human behind it as a result of these mandates, with long-term psychological and educational damage. And I think the most infuriating part of all of this is not just the consequences we've seen over the last couple of years, but the fact that Anthony Fauci got a pardon from President Joe Biden on his way out the door. So there's a lack of accountability, which means if there's another Fauci somewhere in the government, they feel like they can continue to make these decisions with zero consequences at all.
A preemptive pardon from Biden or whoever was pulling Biden's strings. Incredible. Now let's have a look at a little of the celebrity adoration that Anthony Fauci received. This is just a fraction.
We have maybe the coolest man on the planet right now. Wow, and there's the room. This is intense. Does anybody else have Hello. This is a thrill for me because you truly have emerged as a personal hero for me. And you've been this true north, I think, for a lot of people. And it's so deeply, deeply appreciated. So just to have this little corner of your time for us is such a joy. So
Well,
thank you.
It's my pleasure to be with you, Ms. Robertson.
I do love that he got her name wrong, but you heard Julia Roberts there. He was a personal hero. Have we had any sort of admission from the celebrity class, from the media class, that maybe we got this wrong? Maybe we put this man on a pedestal that he never belonged on?
No. And this, the pandemic didn't affect these people. These people have lots of money. They were able to stay in their big fancy homes. They were able to put the working class at risk by making them go to the grocery store to shop for them, making them go to work in kitchens that they wanted shut down to order their food in. There was a whole, elitism, of course, too, that was exposed during the COVID pandemic. And it was led by people like Anthony Fauci and Julia Roberts. And I think one of the questions that maybe we missed during the pandemic was, why is it that Anthony Fauci is so comfortable? Why does he have all of this time on his hands to go and do these interviews with celebrities when supposedly this is a horrific emergency? When was he actually working, according to these diaries? He's constantly talking about all the meetings he's having with all these people. And so, the celebrity class and elitist class didn't have to actually deal with the consequences of any of their suggestions or behavior.
Now, President Trump spoke at the funeral of Graham Lindsay earlier today, and I have to say, it wasn't until Graham Lindsay's death that I learned about his early life, the hardships, the lengths he went to protect his little sister.
When Lindsay was just 20 years old, he lost his mom to cancer. 15 months later, he lost his dad. Their deaths left his 13-year-old sister, Darlene, an orphan. But in God's mercy, she had her wonderful brother to take care of her. On top of it all, Lindsay became her guardian while still in college and helped raise her.
And Katie, Lindsey Graham told those close to him that taking care of his sister and watching how well she turned out was the greatest achievement of his life.
Yeah, he made sure that she went to college, had a wonderful career. She is now serving out his term in the Senate, is going to run for his seat permanently. His early years were formative in the way that he approached his friendships. And of course, sometimes he was controversial in terms of his positions, but he was always trying to be friendly and cordial with everybody he met. And he will be missed in Washington as someone who was able to develop those friendships and really, grease the wheels of making sure that people weren't constantly at each other's throats in D.C. And President Trump's relationship with him is a perfect example. They went at it and ended up being very close friends. But most importantly, Lindsey Graham was a wonderful advisor to President Trump. And I think when he talked about today, despite him being a, quote, war hawk, it was always in the interests of the American people and to defend America from our enemies so that we could win. And so people will miss him for sure. And I think there's a lot of people who look up to his legacy as one that many can follow.
and really the work he did during Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation, the way he stood against the craziness at that time, the accusations, the unfounded allegations that were being thrown around. I thought that really is part of his legacy. Now, before you go, can you just give me an update about the president's meetings earlier today with Ukrainian President Zelensky and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu? We're being told they were productive, positive meetings, both hugely important, Katie.
Yeah, so President Trump, as you just mentioned, met with both of these men at the White House today. They were both in town for the late Senator Lindsey Graham's funeral, so that's why they were in town at the same time. So, of course, the Ukraine-Russia war is dragging on and on with no end in sight. They're trying to continue to end that war. The United States is now looking to Ukraine for drone technology, given they're in this new warfare of drone technology that the United States is behind on. And then, of course, there are these big decisions that the president is trying to make in terms of the next steps with the war in Iran and Israel, as the defense secretary, or Secretary of War, rather, has said repeatedly that, that Israel has been a capable partner in taking out the terrorists of the IRGC. And so we're in this position now where we're all waiting to see what's next, and whether they go to Pickaxe Mountain and bomb that, whether they take Karg Island. And of course, on Tuesday night, the United States and the Saudi government attacked Iranian proxies in Iraq. So, of course, things are still continuing, but Israel has been a reliable and leading partner in the war against Iran. So it makes sense that they would be having that meeting here as Netanyahu was in town for the funeral.
Katie Pavlich, it's been an absolute pleasure. And again, this week, all your reporting throughout COVID was vindicated. You were one of the few who stood against the craziness, and thank you for that.
Well, it only took 6 years, but I guess we'll take the vindication. Thanks. Great to see you.
Still to come, the White House responds to Katy Perry's angry rant about the use of her music. Michael Loftus will have all the entertainment news. Welcome back. Now, we spoke yesterday about Katy Perry's hissy fit after the White House used her song Fireworks for its TikTok posts. Well, the White House has responded with this. Joining me now is comedian and host of the Loftus Party podcast, Michael Loftus. Michael, they went back for seconds. They trolled this pretend astronaut again.
Yeah, she's gonna wish that she was on Uranus full time now. She's gonna wish she was an astronaut. They're gonna make it so awkward. She broke the cardinal rule of teasing. When someone's teasing you, you never let them know it upsets you, or they just never stop. And now that Trump knows, oh, this could go on for weeks. Now, the great thing about this is that Katy Perry's with Justin Trudeau now. She's going to make his life miserable. So now Justin Trudeau is going to know how Canadians feel about him. It's karma.
It is. It's a dose of instant karma we've all been looking for. But she had no grounds for this little tantrum anyway, because she sold the rights to her back catalogue. She doesn't own them. Yeah. They can be used any way anyone sees fit, as long as they're not breaching any agreements there. So it was just basically a tantrum for the sake of a tantrum.
Yeah, she can't put together like 2 days in a row of being nice. This is like the classic thing where you ask your wife, hey, where do you want to go for dinner? And she goes, oh, I don't care. So then you pick, and then she gets mad at you for the way you pick. That's what Katy Perry's doing. You sold your collection. You don't get a choice. It could be Donald Trump in a Speedo dancing to Roar. That could be tomorrow. Anything could happen. These are magical times.
I would not be giving the White House any more ideas, because Donald Trump is on a trolling rampage. He's shared bunch of AI-generated cartoons of his critics. He shared this one of late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, also Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert. All of them there, yes, they are beggars. Well, one of them's already lost their job. The other two are still gainfully employed. He also took aim at Bruce Springsteen, wearing a shirt that reads, "I'm stupid." And of course, the biggest sufferer of Trump derangement syndrome, Rosie O'Donnell. Well, she also got a mention, which is good for her because it's pretty much the only thing that seems to sustain her these days, Michael. You've got to say, the social media team at the White House is having lots of fun.
Yeah, this is wonderful. AI is just like opened up a whole new level of trolling for Trump. I can't imagine how happy he is. He's got to go up every morning and go, now hold on, I can do anything? I can just have a picture of Bruce Springsteen wearing an I'm with stupid shirt? And I love it. That's so funny. It doesn't even say I'm with stupid. It just says I'm stupid. That is just so on the nose. Trump has to be happier than Nancy Pelosi at a liquor store. He's happier than AOC in a room full of cotton balls. He's a happy guy.
Now, Gavin Newsom, this story is a little bit ugly, but we have to get into it. Gavin Newsom, the California governor, presidential hopeful, his former mistress and close aide has made an admission about the pair's first night together, the first night they were intimate together. She told Vanity Fair she was so drunk that she passed out and wet the bed in her sleep. She then left Newsom while he was still sleeping to return to her husband. Michael, this affair went on for about a year. Gross is my summation of this. And why would she even admit this? Like, this is just so humiliating.
Everything about this is wrong. Everything about this is wrong. You have to think that even when she was drunk, there was a little part of her brain, like a reptile hunk, that was still in a self-defense mode. Like, she didn't want to have sex with him so bad. Her body was like, just release everything. Just let it all go. Keep him away from you. So, and yeah, keep her away from Amber Heard and Gavin Newsom. Who? Okay, so you're like, oh, I'm gonna make love with this woman. She does that. You think that's a deal breaker? He keeps coming back for more. What's going on there? This is it's unsavory. I don't care for it.
It is very much unsavoury. And wasn't he also friends or close with her husband? So was he not only cheating, but he was also betraying a mate. I mean, this guy is about as low as it gets.
Yeah. So yeah, it's his friend's wife, and I guess he just hasn't. He just can't go to the cocktail party and casually mention, "Oh, isn't it bad when she wets the bed when you're about to?" Like he couldn't let that part slip out in polite company, or else the whole thing would be unloaded. These are not good people. That's a poor judge of character right there.
These are not good people. It sums them up, but I've got to say he's still the Democrats' best hope of becoming president, of taking over the White House, because you look at what else they have on offer, and it is a hot mess. That is a shallow talent pool indeed. Now, Jennifer Aniston, she was pretty much everyone's favourite friend, wasn't she? Well, her close friends now are reportedly very concerned about her moving too fast with her new boyfriend, Jim Curtis. The pair went public at the end of last year, and insiders claim that Aniston is desperate for Curtis to propose. Michael, is he a gold digger, as some have speculated?
Okay, I don't know this guy. I've never met this guy, but I can say definitively, yes. Because
excellent.
He's in a relationship with Jennifer Aniston. That's America's girlfriend right there. Everybody looks at Jennifer Aniston as the hot friend that she shouldn't. I met her like for about 30 seconds and almost fell in love. I'm pretty sure she fell in love with me too. This Curtis guy, he's no good. You know what he is? He's a health and wellness expert. What's that? He can't provide for her. He's also a hypnotherapist. He's hypnotized her. We have to get her away from him. get her to a desert island, maybe send me. I could maybe help her, talk some sense into her. I'm willing to do it for the betterment of humanity.
Take one for the team.
Yes.
Take one for the team, Michael. I think she needs an intervention. You've got to go around to those insiders that Page 6 is talking to and stage an intervention, go in there and break up this obviously toxic relationship, though we know nothing about him. We've come to that conclusion. Michael Loftus, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And that's all the time we have. Don't go anywhere. Newsnight is up next.